for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
all in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement, et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens. Leur 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup!
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. LaBita.tv. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro, the Sick Podcast. I hope everyone is doing well. You can watch us, of course, on YouTube Live, on Facebook Live, and on Twitter Live. The Sick Podcast is brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group, recently named by Deloitte and CIBC as one of Canada's best managed companies, the country's leading business award, recognizing innovative and world-class companies. The best managed Canadian companies designation fuels Energy's purpose of creating progress for their customers, their employees, and their communities. Join a winning team and check out Energy's career page for available opportunities. Also brought to you in part by Playground. Experience the world-renowned poker experience with free food and drinks at their cash game tables, a bad beat jackpot that is already over $700,000 after the record-setting amount of $2,590,000 won back on August 2nd. Weekly promotions, daily tournaments, and unmatched customer service. Why play anywhere else? Located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes from downtown Montreal. Playground, and brought to you in part by La Bita TB. Brewed in Quebec, a winner of a dozen international awards, La Bita TB offers quality microbrewery beers made with premium ingredients for everyone's taste. La Bita TB, embrace your true nature. Joining me tonight to talk Montreal Canadiens, because I saw something up on Dans les Coulisses, which is, by the way, a website that I like very much. They work extremely hard. Max Truman is running a great site, and one of those people working very hard for him of Dans les Coulisses is Charles-Alexis Bisebois. Charles-Alexis, bonsoir. Comment vas-tu? How are you?
Ça va très bien, Tony. How are you yourself?
Ça va bien, même quand il pleut, le soleil me tend la main, ça va bien.
Ça va bien. Nice.
She was the
I was
best.
not ready for that, but I really appreciate it.
Kathleen Sergerie. That was a long time ago, eh? That was back in the day. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I don't remember those days.
Yeah, that's before your time, by the way. That's before your time. But
yeah,
because
sure.
you're a lot younger than I am. But that was a lot of fun, let me tell you. One of my favorite songs. L'eau a tant passé sous le pont que de son lit, une autre page s'est tournée. Enfin, je sors d'une prison qui me gardait bien enfermé dans le passé. Dans ma tête résonne le son d'une mélodie que j'avais presque oubliée. Tout se met au diapason d'une simple note qui me donne envie de chanter. Je sens que tous les chemins m'amènent où ça va bien. Ça va bien.
Ça va bien.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
I could just sing the ça va bien part. I'm going to be honest with you.
Once upon a time, one of my superiors back in another life told me that I should stop singing because my voice wasn't good.
Yeah.
And I looked at him and I said, this guy just doesn't get it. Does he think that I think I have a good voice? As a matter of fact, I know my voice is so bad, but that's what makes it so good. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need to find ways to tell people. My father was a teacher, and he said to the young kids, you sing very well, but this is not the time. So you need to find those ways to tell people.
Yeah. And I was told that I should stop singing, and I disobeyed the order, and I decided to do it at one point, and I came out with a 14.8% market share, which was a record for that time slot, never seen before, ever. Thank you very much. Well, all right, okay. Very, very proud of that, by the way. Very proud. Okay, happy to have you on. Thank you for accepting the invitation. It's much appreciated. I talked about Donnie Coulis, and this is an article that you wrote, and that's why I picked up the phone and I called you and I said, Charles-Alexis, mon chum, can you come on the Sick Podcast with me? And you said, yes, of course I can. So here we are, okay? Why don't we bring up, for those who missed it, what the tweet looked like, what the article is all about? There it is. Le camp d'entraînement du Canadien approche à grands pas. Training camp is around the corner. Voici 10 enjeux à surveiller en vue des prochaines semaines chez le Canadien. Let's take a look at these 10 things, in the upcoming weeks for the Montreal Canadiens. So 10 things to look at, and we're going to get to all 10. Why not? So why don't we bring up 1 and 2? All right, let's start with number 1. Qui jouera avec Nick Suzuki et Cole Caufield? This is a great question. Number 1 thing going into camp, who will be the line mate for Suzuki and Caufield?
That's a very interesting question, because we know that Martin St. Louis is going to keep them together at the beginning of the season. Last year, they were always together, except one game, I think. Caufield played on the second line when he was healthy, obviously. Last year, Suzuki finished the season with so many guys. He played a lot with Raphaël Harvey-Savard, but around him, it was really messy. We never knew who was going to play with him.
Raphaël Harvey-Pinard, pas Savard, Pinard.
Pinard, of course.
Je pense que tu as dit Savard, mais this is the way. Raphaël Harvey-Pinard and David Savard, you get Raphaël Harvey-Savard. You know what I mean?
I want the two of them to play with Suzuki. So, I want stability for Nick Suzuki on his line and at the centers for him to perform as he played at the beginning of last season. The first 25 game, he was incredible because he played with Cole Caufield and because there were good centers next to him. So I don't know who he's going to be. I think it will be a lot of tests for Martin St. Louis during the training camp. I brought up names like Josh Anderson, Sean Monahan, Kirby Dach, Alex Newhook, Raphaël Harvey-Pinard. These are all guys who can potentially play with him. Mm-hmm. If I have to guess right now, Tony, I'm going to say Josh Anderson. I think by default, he could play there. I know they're all righty, but they played together at some point in the past. I think it can work for a short period of time. I think the season could start like that, but it can change very fast.
We know one thing for sure. There's one player who had a tremendous amount of success with Caufield and Suzuki last year. It was Kirby Dach. Yeah. Who put up points like he's never put up points before at a rate where he's never put up points before at that rate. Mm-hmm. And he was perfect with them. He played his best hockey. The line was clicking. It was hard to imagine another winger. Having said that, when they acquired him, even though they knew he was a versatile player who can play center and wing, their first thought was, this guy could give us size down the middle. We see him as a centerman. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of players who can play center on this team. Sean Monahan can play center. Yep. Doc can play center. Newhook can play center. Jake Evans can play center. Christian Dvorak, who won't be there to start the season, can play center. Obviously, you talked about Suzuki, who's going to be centering, you would think, the number 1 line. So I think when it comes to Doc, everyone knows he'd be perfect on that line. But do you think the decision is already made and it's set in stone? Doc is starting at center. Do you think that's been determined or it's open?
I think you always wanted to leave it open a little bit, but as right now, if the season has to start right now, I think Kirby Dach is playing as the second centerman of that team because they wanted to bring him as a center. And I remember last year, of course, that line with Dach on the wing, it was perfect. It was very cool. And on your podcast, Jeff Gorton said, yeah, but he's still a centerman, and they still tried him at center.
Yeah.
And it worked. Not as good as it worked on the wing, but it still worked. So
that was
I
a
think
great conversation, by the way. In my opinion, the best chat that Jeff Gordon has had since he's here. I say that very humbly. Thank you very much.
It was a good one. So, I think they want to keep trying that way to have Doc at center, because they don't want to win this year. They want to win a little bit more, but they're not reaching for the Stanley Cup. So if you want to keep the development, I think you need to have Kirby Doc at center. The other guys around him are going to play wings to accommodate Dak and to make sure that he can develop as the guy who was drafted 3rd overall a few years ago. So in my book, and I think in Martin St. Louis' book, he's at center for now.
If I'm Kent Hughes, out of all of them, who do you think I want to play with those guys? This is a little bit of a trick question, by the way. If I'm Kent Hughes, who do I want to play with Suzuki and Caufield?
I'm not gonna say Doc, because I think he wants him at center. So maybe does he wants to see Alex Newhook because he just acquired him and he wants to put him in good conditions?
You ready for this? Go. If I'm Kent Hughes, now hear me out, eh? If I'm Kent Hughes, I want to see Monahan play there because I want him to pick up as many points as possible to raise his value as high as I can on the market. So then I can say, salut la visite, thank you very much, and get myself a very good pick or a prospect.
You're right.
That's what I would. Of course I'm right.
I think.
Go ahead, Christian. All right. It's interesting, though, right? And by the way, I like your thought process that every time a general manager makes a deal, I mean, let's be honest, he wants to look good as well. So it would make sense to have Alex Newhook on that. By the way, Newhook can skate with those guys. Eh? He can skate with those guys, and he has the IQ to play with those guys. The only thing I'm not crazy about that is there's some size missing on that line. Not that Sean Monahan's Jack the Giant Killer, by the way. In an ideal world, the guy to complement the line would be a Josh Anderson, because you'd have a guy with some size who can defend himself and would be there to insulate some of these smaller players.
I have a new theory for you. Let's say that Josh Anderson starts on the wing on the first line because of the reasons you just said and the one I said before, and you have a Sean Monahan who plays with Newhook and or Dak or whatever to help the young kids to acclimate. At the beginning of the season, do you think as the season progresses, now you can move a guy like Sean Monahan on the first line because the trade deadline is coming, and because you say, well, if he plays with Caufield and Suzuki, he can look good for being traded for a first pick or whatever you want to trade him, as you said a few minutes ago? Can you do? I think you can do that.
You can do that, but you know the most value you're going to get from Monahan is for him to play on that line as much as possible to pick up as many points as possible. But you can definitely do that. There's no doubt about it. So now question number 2, which goes hand in hand with what we were just talking about, because in terms of Monahan can play center, Doc can play center. Let's get to it. Qui jouera au centre? So behind Suzuki at center, who will play at center? I know this. Christian Dvorak's going to play at center at one point when he comes back. I'm fairly confident about that. So who plays at center? You say Kirby Doc?
I think Doc is going to be the centerman for the second line. I think they want to have that test. I think Jake Evans has to play center because you don't want to put a Monahan or a Newhook or a Doc or a Dvorak on the fourth line. So I think by default, Jake Evans is the fourth lineman.
So Suzuki, Doc, Dvorak, and Evans.
Yeah,
with
you have the
Monahan and Newhook playing wing and or playing center if another center is out with an injury, like is the case for Dvorak at the beginning of the season.
I think so, and I think you last year they started Doc on the wing and it worked, and then they brought it at center. So maybe they want to do the same thing with Alex Newhook to see if the recipe is going to still work. So with the surplus at center, I think that a guy like Newhook could start at wing and could move around. And I see Sean Monahan as a player who can really help a young center. I really see him play with either Doc or Newhook, because I don't know if you remember last year at the beginning of the season, Doc was playing center and Monahan was on the wing, but sometimes he could take draws because Doc was not used to do on that side, and they can help him, and they divided the responsibilities. So I think it can happen again with a guy like Sean Monahan. So that's why I think right now Monahan and Newhook could start the end, could play at the wing if Christian Dvorak is healthy.
All right, okay. Then again, let's not forget that even though Doc, we see him as a center, or they see him as a center, at one point, if he's struggling with his confidence, and players usually struggle with their confidence when they try and put up points, but they're not putting up as many points as they'd like, don't be surprised if they go out and say, hey, you know what, play wing for a couple of games. That could happen too.
But that's what I like about this team. They have so many options and they can adapt. And as long as the young guys are at the center of the plan, if Kirby Dach plays wing, I want it because the Canadian wants him to play wing at that moment. I don't want it because they want to put another player at center, or they need to play Monahan at center for some reason. No, I want Doc and Newhook and those guys to be at the center of the plan. So if it goes by playing them wing for a few games, let it be.
All right, okay. Let's go to number 3. Number 3. Les blessés vont-ils revenir à temps? But in terms of injuries, correct me if I'm wrong, and we know they've had like 8,223 injuries over the past couple of years. I made up that number, by the way. I think it's give or take about under 1,500 man games lost, or about 1,500 man games lost over the last 2 years. Is there anyone that's escaping me other than Christian Dvorak? And if it is, it's only Dvorak. Doesn't look like Dvorak will be ready for the season opener.
No, I don't think Dvorak is gonna be ready. Your number is not far from mine. As you can see, I said 26-35 at the top of the picture.
Not bad.
So we think alike. I think for now Dvorak is gonna be probably the only one, because a lot of guys were injured in January, February, and it was they had time to heal, or it was the kind of injuries that doesn't take necessarily 5 or 6 months. Of course, we can have surprise at training camp. Of course, there can be injuries at training camp, so we don't know what's going to happen. But from what we know as of right now, I think Dvorak is the only one who's going to miss some time.
I think so too, yeah. Okay, point number 4. Qui seront les attaquants en trop? This is going to be, I think this is going to be a real good point of discussion here, okay? Who's going to be the extra forwards? Now, let me just grab my pen, piece of paper, and let me, in no particular order, let me just write down 10 names, because I think the 10 are the easiest to come up with, right? So, Suzuki. Dach. Dvorak. Monahan. Newhook, Caufield.
Of course.
So, I put down on this list number 1, number 2, number 3, 4, 5 centers or center/wing. Then we got Caufield as a winger, of course. 7, Josh Anderson. 8. Unfortunately, it's going to have to be Armia with a contract obligation. And then there's 9, there's 10, there's 11, and there's 12. So out of 9, 10, 11, and 12 in no particular order, Slafkovsky. RHP. Pezzetta. Ylonen. And not sure if you see anybody else.
Did you say Brendan Gallagher?
Brendan Gallagher, of course. Would you see Elias Anderson? Do you think he could be in the mix?
Depends of his training camp, but he could be there.
Okay. But then again, you can make a real strong case that he'll be in Laval. Okay, so contracts. Suzuki, Doc, Dvorak, 3 are in for sure. Monahan, Newhook, Caufield, 6 are in for sure. Anderson, Armia, 8 are in for sure. Gallagher, 9 are in for sure. Those 9 are in for sure. Suzuki, Doc, Dvorak, Monahan, Newhook, Caufield, Anderson, Armia, Gallagher. Those 9 are in for sure. Now there's Slafkovsky, RHP, Pezzetta, Ylonen, and Anderson.
Did you say Jake Evans?
And Jake Evans. Okay. Lias Anderson, I can scratch him off the list right away because you would think that Laval would need a player like him, especially with losing a couple of players the way they did.
I don't think it's about Laval needing him, but yeah, I think he's going to go to Laval.
Okay, so we can scratch him off the list. Is it safe to say that we can scratch Pezzetta off the list because Michael Pezzetta is more of a type of player that it won't stunt his development if he misses a game or two here or there, and probably is such a good team guy that he wouldn't give you any problems if he's the extra man at 13? Is that safe to say?
At 13, I think it's absolutely the kind of guy that you need to have at 13, and I don't
ideal
think he
13?
would complain.
The ideal 13?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's well said.
So at that point, once again, Suzuki, Doc, Dvorak, that's 3. Monahan, Newhook, Caufield, that's 6. Anderson, Armia, Gallagher, that's 9. If we want to put Jake Evans there, that's 10. And now Pezzetta's out of the lineup.
Yeah.
So
I have Slafkovsky and RHP.
Well, you know, so they didn't send Slafkovsky to Laval last year.
Yep.
Which will lead a lot of people to believe that they're not going to send Slafkovsky to Laval this year.
That's what I think.
What if his camp is terrible? What if his camp is terrible? Do you think it's impossible that Slafkovsky goes to Laval if his camp is terrible? It's possible.
I don't think it's not impossible, but I will believe it when I see it, because if they decided to keep him for a year, even though he missed the last 6 or 7 months or something because of his injury, I think they still want to keep him in Montreal. If they wanted to send him to Laval, it would have happened last year, or he would have been to the World Juniors or something. So as of now, I think the plan is very likely to keep him in Montreal. And if he is in Montreal, he's going to play. That being said, if he really, really, really has a bad camp, they would need to send him to Laval. Are they going to do it? That's the question. I'm not sure about that.
Yulinen's on the two-way, n'est-ce pas?
Contract two-way, but he needs to go through waivers.
He needs to go through waivers, yes.
Yep.
That's interesting because that's not a player you want to lose to waivers. That's a versatile player. Now, he's not irreplaceable, obviously.
Yep.
Raphael Harvey-Pinard, with the way he played last year, got to be there.
I was really afraid because Raphael Harvey-Pinard doesn't need to go through waivers to go to Laval. So
no,
I was afraid of the fact that maybe it would be easy to send him to Laval if there's a surplus. But without Mike Hoffman and without Rempetlik, there is room for Raphael Harvey-Pinard. So for me, he is there, and if he's up, he's going to play. He's not going to play as much as he played at the end of the season last year because there were a ton of injuries, but he's going to play in Montreal this year.
I would think so, because if he doesn't make the Montreal Canadiens, there's going to be some people who aren't going to be happy, starting with the president of the Raphael Harvey-Pinard fan club, Danik, with the gold chains, Danik. Raphael Harvey-Pinard. Yeah, Danik.
Yep.
Yeah. Danik is not going to be happy. And Danik doesn't look like a guy that you want to mess with. Okay? All right, okay. So we got that out of the way, I think. So once again, Suzuki, Doc, Dvorak, Monahan, Newhook, Caufield, Anderson, Armia, Jake Evans, Gallagher, Slafkovsky, RHP.
Yep.
All right.
That's my 12 for now.
Pezzetta is your 13th man. Ylonen is in and out of the lineup every now and then. Up, down, up, down. Obviously, you don't want to lose him on waivers. All right, okay. Point number 5. Quel espoir vont se démarquer à l'attaque? who are the prospects that will show us something at the forward position?
You know,
who are the prospects?
I think Sean Farrell's gonna have a chance because he finished the season in the NHL, but we saw it play last year. I really think he would benefit from playing in Laval. So, and unless he has like a huge training camp, I really see him playing with the Rocket at the beginning of the season. I do not believe.
Would they be tempted to have Machar and Slafkovsky on a line together?
No,
I don't think so either.
No, Machar didn't play that well in junior. He doesn't belong in the NHL right now.
No, I don't think he's ready either. I saw him at development camp. He scored a nice goal, but I don't think he's ready. You know, there's an interesting name there, which is Emil Heineman. Emil Heineman's got an NHL shot. Emil Heineman can score goals. He's,
we didn't talk about Heineman. We didn't talk about Heineman that much last year because he was playing in Europe. But once he finished the season in Laval, we saw that shot. You talk about it. It's really his biggest tool. I think he can have a real chance because the other names, I think they all have a little something that you're not sure if you want to bring them. Maybe Elias Anderson because he has an experience in the NHL and he would make Jeff Gorton looks good for his pick from New York. But if the other names, I do not believe that Owen Beck is going to make the NHL. I know he wants to make it, and every time he talks about it, he wants to play in the NHL. What's the point? You have that many forwards. Why bring a 19-year-old, as good as he is right now in the NHL, make him go to the dominate in the OHL? So that would be fine for me.
He'll end up taking Evans' spot, I think, but not right away.
Exactly. Next year you'll see, but right now let him play in the OHL.
Yeah.
Emil Heineman would probably be the name that would stand out for me. If he has a really great camp, he's going to open some eyes because he finished the season strong in Laval and he has a really good offensive upside, which is what the Canadiens are looking for. So Heineman is the pick that I want to see. Maybe a Joshua Roy or a Riley Kidney because they finished so strong in the queue last year. But I see them starting in Laval, and if they get hot on a serious period of time, now they can be called up. But Heineman did that a little bit, so maybe he's going to be my odd pick.
Quel genre de camp d'entraînement pour Juraj Slafkovsky? What kind of camp for Juraj Slafkovsky?
I'm really curious about that because he missed so many times. We talked about it, and his training during the summer was very interesting for me. Working on his breath and being more alert on the ice and all we saw the pictures, right, with the glasses and everything. So I want to know how it's
the virtual reality
exactly.
and all that stuff, but taking in the oxygen, almost kind of like playing at altitude type of thing. Nicolas Cloutier, by the way, of TVA Sport, did a fantastic article on that. And I think we should mention it as well. Look, based on what we're hearing, he's going to come in lighter than he did a year ago.
Yeah, I think so. The only thing I'm worried about, Tony, is the fact that he worked on so many things, the breath, the reality, looking around him and everything. I hope he's not going to be stuck in his head and he's not going to be thinking too much, because if he worked on the way he breathes and he thinks about it on the ice, I need to breathe that way, I need to shot that way, I need to be placed that way, he's going to be stuck in his own head and he's not going to do well. But if it comes natural to him, he's going to be a better player than the one we saw in the past months. So I'm really curious.
Charles-Alexis, I think anything you practice ends up becoming a force of habit. I understand your point. Really, I get it.
Yep.
And I'll be paying attention to it. But I think that once you just start practicing a certain way of breathing, you start practicing a certain way of doing things, I think it's going to come as an automatic.
Yeah, I think so. And I hope so. But, I don't know how many times he worked it during the summer and if he started late or whatever. So I'm pretty confident that he's going to be fine. But I still have that little doubt in my mind. And, he's a first pick overall, so the attention's going to be on him. But I think we're going to see pretty early in the camp what the results of his summer is gonna give to the Canadiens. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be quite positive.
You know what? I hope he comes in and he scores a goal right away in some of the exhibition games, because if he doesn't, like you just said, all eyes are going to be on him. The first pick of 1 year ago, and we know that he had his season was cut short due to an injury. the end of the day, this guy did not put up a lot of points last year. I think it was 10 points in 39 games or whatever it was.
Yep.
There are rookies who did worse. There are rookies who did better, but the expectations were so high, probably would have been somewhat impossible to reach those expectations. But I want him to get off on the right foot because, in Montreal, when you do, you can just take off from there. And if you don't get off on the wrong foot, things just kind of snowball from there, and they just end up getting worse. So I hope he's, he shows us what he's capable of showing us. He doesn't have to do it every night. He's still a young player, but I just hope he gets off to a good start.
Yeah, and we know it's not going to be based on results. No one is saying, "Oh, he only had 10 points last year." We're talking about the progression. We're talking about what we're seeing on the ice. I want him to be alert when he has the puck and not just looking to his stick. So that's the kind of things we're going to be looking at. If we think he's going in the right direction, the points, I'm not going to say not going to matter, because it's always going to matter a little bit, but it's not going to matter that much.
I hear you. All right. Okay. Next. And before we do, a shout out to Murphy Clinic, of course, an aesthetic clinic specializing in medical aesthetic care. They offer permanent laser hair removal as well as a wide range of treatments for skin problems such as acne, rosacea, fine lines, and more. They currently have 2 clinics, one located in Montreal, Shop Angus, and the other on the North Shore in Terrebonne. They're also opening soon in Quebec City. Visit murphyclinic.ca or on Instagram at Murphy Clinic. All right, okay, there you have it. I also want to give a shout out to Charlie and Sam over at Optimal Stretch Clinic, optimalstretchclinic.com, Optimal Stretch Clinic on Instagram, 4710 St. Ambroise. They're in Point St. Charles. And whether it's fascial stretch therapy, whether it's deep tissue sports massage, whether it's osteo, whether it's physio, whether it's cupping, acupuncture, you name it, it's become kind of like a one-stop shop. It's pretty awesome. All right. Did we lose Charles-Alexis? No, we have Charles-Alexis again. Okay. Quels défenseurs vont faire le club? Okay. Which defensemen will make the team? Who are your top 6?
My top 6 for now, I have obviously Madison and Savard, because for obvious reason, they are the veterans here.
Yeah.
You need to have Caden Goalie playing every night if he's healthy, because we saw how good he is. So
100%.
Of course, Caden Goalie's here. I want to have Jordan Harris on that team. He's been in Montreal for more than a year, and he brings something interesting to the table. I don't see any value to bring him back to Laval. So for me, he's in my top 6.
Good first pass.
I want to see Harbor Jackeye on that team. I think he had really a good season for the type of defenseman he is. And if he's healthy, I think he belongs to that team as well.
He's kind of the Canadiens' Lyle Odeline of the 1993 Stanley Cup winning team.
Yeah, kind of is.
Yeah.
And he's very liked by everyone, so it would be special to send Jackeye. Imagine the reaction of the fans if Jackeye was sent to Laval. That would be something.
No, I hear you. But the big question here is Gustav Lindstrom.
Yeah, for me, I think Kovacevic and Lidstrom are in that mix. I think they're gonna make the team. There is a world where Lidstrom doesn't make the team, but I don't think it's very likely. I think Kent Hughes brought him to see what he has in Lidstrom. So Lindstrom and Kovacevic could be, for example, 6 and 7. I think Justin Barron is going to Laval by default because there are a lot of defensemen and it's easy to send him down. He was sent down at the beginning of last season as well. So I don't know if it's fair. I don't know if it's going to happen. But if he doesn't have a huge training camp, he is at risk for me. And, there is Chris Weidman. The thing about Chris Weidman is we don't know how many goaltenders are going to start the season in Montreal. So we don't know if you can carry 7 or 8 defensemen. But there is a world where Chris Weidman is going through waivers. I know he's a very, very well-liked veteran, but he's taking a spot. And they cannot carry Chris Weidman through anything.
Qui seront les gardiens en ville? Who will be the goalies in town?
I think we can dismiss Caden Primo He's going to be sent down to Laval, and because of his contract, 2 years contract, he's not going to be picked. Have you seen a lot of guys getting picked in the last year with 2 years on their contract? There is Kovacevic, but he has a really low average. It's not necessarily the case for Primo, more than $1 million. I don't think he's going to be picked. So obviously, it's between Montembeault, Allen, and DeSmith. As of right now, I see Samuel Montembeault and Jake Allen making the team if they are healthy, because there is a possibility that a goaltender can get injured through the beginning of the season. But if they're healthy, the two are here.
And Montembeault will start, maybe not with the label of a number one, but in Marty St. Louis' head, I think he's starting with a little bit of a head start on Allen. We recall, of course, that Marty St. Louis was very reluctant to say that Samuel Montembeault was his number one goalie last year. On a couple of occasions, he said it was Jake Allen, but I think the performances down the stretch showed us that Montembeault is in pole position.
And Jake Allen's not going to complain. He said it. He said, I want to be there for the guys, and if Montembeault needs to play and I need to be here for him, I'm going to do just that. So I don't think there's going to be a huge debate here. Samuel Montembeault is going to play a little bit more than Jake Allen. And then, of course, you have Casey DeSmith. Kent Hughes said last week that DeSmith is not going to be buried in the minors, right? And I believe him, because if he acquires a guy like him just to put it in Laval, the other players in the league are going to take notes. So he's going to be in the NHL. I don't know if it's in Montreal. I don't know if it's somewhere else. As of right now, the market for goaltenders are really slow, so I'm not sure there's a taker for him. Maybe it's going to need an injury somewhere to trade Casey DeSmith. So as of right now, I need to say that there's going to be 3 goaltenders on that roster just because of the way the market is. But we're at the end of the August. October is far down the road. Many things can happen from there. So I'm not ready to say that there will absolutely be 3 goaltenders on that roster. But as of now, maybe you don't have a choice to think about the possibility.
Yeah, the 2 other things that you wrote about, of course, is going to be David Reinbacher at camp, and how does Marty St. Louis approach the training camp? So let's start with David Reinbacher. I had a chance to see him at development camp. We had a chance to see video highlights of him, a game that he played a couple of weeks ago. He was on the ice for a couple of goals against, but he looks very, very smooth. He doesn't look like a player who plays afraid to make a mistake. He looks like he's a player who will go out and take chances in the offensive zone. Still a lot of growth there as a player. But, a player who's used in the number one pairing with his team, of course. What do you expect from him at camp?
I want him not to be afraid to play with those guys, because, as you said, he played in the development camp last month and he was good, but he was against player his own age or around his own age, and they were not as good as him. So right now he's going to be against guys from the NHL. He's going to be against Nick Suzuki and Cole Caufield and other good defensemen. So I want him to just feel comfortable, because we know he's not going to be at training camp to win a spot. He's likely to go back in Switzerland for next season. So we just want to see what he looks like. We want to see what he needs to work on. So that's why I have him in his own category, because it's another debate from the other guys. But I want him to feel comfortable on the ice and not to be intimidated.
Awesome stuff. Marty St. Louis.
You remember last year at the training camp, it started really, really strong. And there were talks of le camp Torturella, so la torture. So
yes,
of course we know the link between John Tortorella and Martin St. Louis.
It was a pace. Really, it was the practices were up tempo, pardon me, and it was a pace that we weren't used to seeing. I don't think the players were used to seeing it either. I mean, they were wondering if they were going to be able to get through camp.
Exactly. And you saw the season. It's not the only factor, but there were a lot of injuries, as we know. So I'm just wondering, is there a link?
You think they pushed them too hard? Yeah. You think you pushed them too hard?
I think a little bit, because the camp just started. They didn't have a huge rhythm of games for a few months. So maybe it could have started a little bit slower. Of course, I'm not. I don't know everything that Martin St. Louis knows. I analyze it from the outside, but around the NHL, the coach are starting a little bit lower at the level of intensity, and they progressively augment it. It was the first camp of Martin St. Louis in the NHL.
Yeah.
Coach. So I wonder if he's going to go with the same strategy. I wonder if he's going to adapt. I wonder what Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon are thinking about it. Jeff Gordon has seen a lot of training camp in his life, so maybe they had a talk last year about it.
It's not a bad point. Curious. If you're going to be behind the bench for your first training camp, you want to do, as they say en bon français, épater la galerie de presse, right? Maybe impress a couple people, even though he doesn't have to impress anybody. But I understand what you're saying. Like, he probably really wanted to get the guys going in camp so much more so than ever before, and to a fault where, all of a sudden guys end up tweaking something and then they're playing through it, and that's how you can get hurt.
So that's why I'm wondering, is he going to adapt because of he doesn't have to make that first impression in a training camp? Is he going to continue to stay the course because this is the John Tortorella way and he wants to keep it? So I'm not sure exactly about that, but it's going to be a second camp, so he's going to progress too. We talked a lot during the season about the kids progressing. It's the same for St. Louis, and he's the first to say, I'm not perfect to run a bench. I still need to learn some things, and it's perfect. He's learning on the job. The team is not expected to win a Stanley Cup in the next year, so he has room to grow himself too. So I really want to see what he's going to look like after a fresh summer like that. He's sure of his job. Last year there were, he was just pitched in the NHL, so he had to work on a lot of things. Now he has a lot of bases that he can work on. So I'm really intrigued to see what Martin St. Louis is gonna bring to his players next month, actually.
A couple of contract extensions, one of which is André Tourigny, a 3-year contract extension with the Arizona Coyotes in circumstances that are not easy for sure. And Austin Matthews is the highest paid player in the National Hockey League now, surpassing Connor McDavid, a 4-year deal at $13.25 million. Very interesting, because earlier in the season, there was all kinds of scenarios and all kinds of talk that Austin Matthews' contract would be up. And then, you know what? They wouldn't bring him back. And then he would be, because he had 1 year left on his contract. And of course, whether or not he was going to go to unrestricted free agency, when Jim Treliving came, was it Brad Treliving came? Jim's his father. When Brad Treliving came in, of course, former general manager of the Calgary Flames, now general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs, he made it very clear that he wanted to sit down with Austin Matthews and he wanted to keep him in Toronto for a while. So Austin Matthews is a Leaf. It's I know what a lot of people are thinking. Highest paid player in the National Hockey League, and he got by the first round once. Right? Yeah. That's what a lot of people are thinking. But the reality is, as time goes on, and some players' contracts will be up and others will still have their contracts, that contracts are going to go up, and there's always going to be somebody who's going to end up taking over as that highest paid player. And within a couple of years from now, it's not going to be Austin Matthews anymore, you would think. It's probably going to be another player in the National Hockey League. But it's interesting that it's coming off of a year in which he was not his regular scoring self. He's had better years, and this is the contract.
And he's going to be 26 in a few months, so that by the time his actual contract at 11.64, his contract is going to be up. He's going to be 27. Add 4 years to that, he's going to be 31. So it's a good deal for him, because at 31 he can still cash in. I don't know if he's going to sign a 8-year deal at that time, because
that'll probably be the last year of his. That'll probably be the last contract of his career. At 31.
Exactly. So we'll see what he's going to sign. But with the cap, who's going to go up by, I don't know how many $1 million through the next 5 years, he's going to be in a good position to, one, make a lot of money, and two, to decide if he still wants to commit to the Maple Leafs. Because as of right now, clearly, he's happy with the money, and he's ready to ride the Toronto media for the next 5 years with what it goes through. So maybe he believes in the plan. Maybe he just wants the money. I'm not sure what's his end game here, but clearly he's happy with the deal because he signed it, and he's going to have the opportunity to sign a next huge deal. It makes me think of the NBA, Tony, because in the NBA the contract are shorts, and you always have the opportunity to sign to your value, because you don't commit to an 8-year deal that you signed a year before, so you have a 9-year deal in fact, and then through year 7, 8, 9, you think you're underpaid or whatever. It's not going to be the case with Austin Matthews. So good for him and good for the Leafs, because as of right now, he's under contract for a few more years. So that's good for both sides, I think.
What do Austin Matthews and Tony Marinaro have in common, and how are they different? They both work in sports, but Austin Matthews makes $13.25 million per year, and Tony Marinaro makes $13.25 per hour. There you have it. On that note, I don't know whether to laugh or cry, but I'll say thank you very much, Charles-Alexis Bisebois of Dans les Coulisses. Always a pleasure talking to you. Always available. Your time, your info, your insight, it's all very much appreciated. Merci beaucoup, mon chum.
Thank you very much, Tony. Always a pleasure.
You're very welcome. Thank you. And there you have it. If you're watching on YouTube, like it, share it with your friends. That was a pretty funny joke, as a matter of fact, but now I'll cry. And comment sick, S-I-C-K, S-I-C-K, S-I-C-K. And if you're going to listen to us on Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review. It's my way of feeling the love. And if you don't think it's worthy of 5 stars, give me a 5-star anyway, because I have a couple of kids and everyone needs to eat. All right. Thank you very much. On that note, for Shane Comeau and Juliana, Sammy, and Agnello Cavallaro, it's the Sick Podcast. And me, I'm Marinaro. Marination, baby. Woo!
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. LaVie.tv. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.